this point that I'm sure JP McManus will be banging his head off the wall if he doesn't win, given the fact that he's got Jericho de Repenay, Manzor West, who's going to be running in a novice hurdle again very soon, and arguably the best of all of these, we haven't seen in jumper hurdle yet. Champion bumper winner, A Dream to Share. But Mystical Power was very, very impressive, Katie Young. Question is, why was this horse not higher regarded going into this race? He seems to be, at least on home reputation, down the pecking order at the Mullins camp. And given he's arguably the best bred horse, certainly of his novice hurdling generation, it's odd to think that it's taken this long for him to really explode onto the scene.
Yeah, I think a couple of factors probably that stand up there. First off, he was a summer horse who'd run in the summer. That kind of puts a lot of people off. Although over the last few years, Marine National and the Dream to Share are just two horses that have proved that that isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I think from David Casey's interview at the weekend that he was kind of saying that this horse doesn't show very much at home at all. And they actually haven't seen how good he is because he doesn't show them anything, and he's only really saving it for the track. So that could be two factors why he's probably not as high up on the radar as probably other very good workhorses down there. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. A lot of good horses down the line that I've worked with before have shown nothing at home, and they've actually come on to do a lot of better things than horses that have shown a lot at home. So I necessarily don't think that's a bad thing, and I actually think there's a lot of room for improvement with him. He looks like a big baby still, and if you take into consideration that maybe his homework isn't good and he's very, very raw on the track, he might just, when the penny drops, he might just be even better. But look, I thought that was the performance of the year so far for me. I just thought he was really, really impressive. I don't think he's anywhere near the finished article at all. And he looks extremely raw, especially early on in his races. He's kind of racing with his mouth wide open and his jumping is a bit sketchy. But I do think his jumping tends to improve for the second part of his race. The kind of quicker they get going and but when they get racing, he looks like his jumping is a lot more slicker than it is the first part of his race. I think once he learns to settle and he kind of drops the bridle, I think that will come in time and you'll probably see his jumping a lot more fluent. But I do think a step up in grade and off the back of a faster run race, I think you'll see a lot more improvement from him. And I think a race like the Supreme will really suit him down to the ground. I actually thought he kind of looked tap for toe turning in. I thought, maybe today's not going to be his day. But I loved the way he bullied his way through all his rivals turning in. I just loved the way he did that. And he did that at Galway as well. I just think he picks up so well. Like the way he can just quicken and put the race to bed so quickly, it's just effortless once he gets going. All he needs is a wake-up call and he's gone. Like, I was just so impressed by the way he did things on Sunday. I remember watching the race and thinking that's the Supreme winner right there. And I've never watched a horse and thought that so far this season. I was just blown away by him. I actually don't think they've even scratched the surface with him yet. I think there's so much more to come from him. I think the Galileo side of him really brings that speed in there. I think that's a really good point to make, that that flat pedigree is really bringing out that raw speed. I don't know whether you want to take this, you can take whatever way you want, but I actually looked at the sectional timings for his race and compared them to Stateman's on similar ground at Punchestown. The going was soft, same distance, same track, and they are nearly down to the millisecond, nearly the same. 4 minutes, 20 seconds for both races, which I think something like you can take it like different days, different times of year, you can say all that, but that's a big thing for me. Like, do you know that was a Grade 1 run race, and they went a good gallop that day. You can take it however you want, but I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, the sectional times are particularly intriguing. It is different race days, but that's still surely significant.
Same going, comparing same him. So.
Yeah, it's at the very least, it's a very good talking point.
Yeah,
and a really interesting thing to mention. The whole Galileo factor is fascinating. His ownership, George, is fascinating as well. It's Rich Ritchie, which you'd expect, although he sold Any Power to Coolmore. Coolmore breeder, they're involved in the ownership, and of course JP as well. He could carry any one of those silks on the day, and any one of them would be incredibly famous. Right now, it's JP silks. Does he jump well enough, though, to justify being a 4-1 shot? For all that we hadn't seen him for 6 months and maybe he was a little bit ring rusty, but he's not exactly fluent at some of his hurdles. If you wanted to be really picky about a horse who's now 4-1 favourite for the Supreme.
I was going to say, I'd worry if he jumped the last 4, like he jumped the first 4, if that makes sense. I think he warmed his way into the race. He was actually very clever at the last. Like I actually thought a lot to like with how he jumped the last. That's the fastest he'd have ever gone jumping a hurdle. He'd have never gone that quick at home. And sometimes that's why you quite often see in these novice hurdles. It's always the last. They'll boot one out the way, and usually the race is finished anyway. But it's like that would have been a real shock to the system for him, and he dealt with it really well. Like he got right in the bottom, and he actually cleared it by a good sort of 6 to 8 inches. Like he sort of bunny hopped over it and didn't lose any speed. I thought Mark Walsh did a really good job on him as well, because he's obviously a horse that can run quite keen. And it's a really difficult line to sort of tread when they're not jumping like that, because you sort of, part of you wants to go, oh God, we've lost 4 lengths there, and give him a slap down the shoulder and say, come on. But he might have lit him up, and he did an excellent job of just walking that line, just giving him a little squeeze, getting him back to them, but not so much that he lit him up. Like, I thought it was a really nice educational ride for Mark Walsh, and for him to clear away like he did later on, I thought it was fantastic. Like when he looked so green still. I don't think there's a standout in the Supreme at the minute, and this is clearly a very talented horse, so I wouldn't put anyone off him.
Although we might very well see Mystical Power one more time. There's a possibility he'll go to the Dublin Racing Festival, but it's all guesswork when it comes to the JP horses. And don't doubt us, we're right about fact to file. We know the race he's going for, and get on board the gravy train with us. And if we're wrong, we'll quickly apologise for that. The Willie Mullins gravy train continued to roll on, though, a 1-2-3 in the Lawlers of Naas Novice Hurdle Grade 1. Not with the way the market was anticipating, although Readin Tommy Wrong was very well backed before the off 25s into 16s. He got a great ride from Daryl Jacob as well. George, let's start with you this time. What did you make of Readin Tommy Wrong?
I was actually really impressed with this. Like, I think Little Antiques lost nothing in defeat. Like, they've cleared away from Lecky Watson. I'd say, is it Untubber? Is that how we're saying it? That's the Irish way to say it, is it? I presume from
my Irish is awful, but yeah, let's go for it. Why not?
Yeah. I think Croke Park just looks a bit one-paced. But I think Firefox probably didn't stay is the unfortunate, because that was too bad to be true from him, from what we've seen of him previously. And I thought he jumped pretty well. But with the winner, I actually thought he looked really quite green still at parts of the race. So when the flag went up, he was he had been with them, and he was inexplicably 4 lengths behind after a couple of strides. That he almost took him a couple of strides to get going. And he was he was never off the bridle, but he was sort of behind the bridle at various points in the race. Daryl Jacob was having to make his mind up for him at his hurdles, and eventually he he's run on very well. He just didn't seem to quite travel for most of the race. So with that in mind, if he can as long as he's just green and not lazy, I could see him improving further as he learns to race a bit more efficiently. I'll be very, very impressed with him. And like you said, the form of his maiden hurdle was Frank the other day with what looks like a very nice horse. I think the handicappers have to have another look at that race, because they didn't rate it very highly at the time. But yeah, I'd say this horse will keep improving.
I have a slight doubt about this race because of a major doubt about Il Atlantique. That's the 6th time he's raced. It's the third time he's been beaten, but crucially, it's the third time he's been eyeballed and beaten. And he's a coastal path. They're morning glories. They look great at home. They've got a lot of talent. If you view this race in isolation, if that's your first time viewing Il Atlantique, you'd have all the manner of excuses for him. Ground's against him. He's got tired towards the finish of the race. He'll come out of this race stronger. He'll be better the next day. He got beaten by Stellar Story in a 1 mile, 7.5 furlong bumper. That shouldn't happen. Stellar Story needs 3 miles now. He needed 3 miles back then in his bumpers, and yet once he eyeballed him, he had too much for him. Firefox, yeah, I'm not going to complain about that, but again, he was eyeballed and came unstuck. And in this race, I could tell you coming down to the last, Daryl Jacob was going to win, because all he had to do was get within a length of Il Atlantique, and I knew he'd go by. And that makes me a little bit worried about the overall form of this race.
Would you not say Lecky Watson's still a fair yardstick? Like, you take Il Atlantique out, forget about Firefox, who didn't stay. He's still beating Lecky Watson 7.5 lengths, who has form that ties very closely with Slade Steele. While Il Atlantique might not be giving his best, I'd say the winner's still achieved plenty, just beating Lecky Watson 7.75 lengths.
Yeah, but Lecky Watson gave himself no chance to win the race because he was way too free the whole way around.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah.
Do you think Lecky Watson would be one for the county?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think most people would think Martin Pipe.
But just
I'd say you're right, though.
Yeah,
exactly. He's unless you can settle him.
Yeah.
If you can, and this is the thing that's easier said than done. Like, it's all very well and good to say, "Oh, get the horse to settle and he'll go and win." Some horses just don't have the temperament for that. I wouldn't trust this Il Atlantique as far as I could throw him. I really wouldn't. And I think the 8-1 about him for the Ballymore is just a horrendous price. This is exactly the kind of horse bookmakers want you backing. A horse that the second he's eyeballed folds like a cheap deck chair. So if you want to go on back and forth, by all means. The Supreme was mentioned by Willie afterwards. He also very much mentioned going to Cheltenham straight away with both, that they won't have another run. I wonder if they're going to have a decision with Il Atlantique, as in give him another run. I'd keep an eye on the entries with this horse, because I think his best chance of a win is going to be the County Hurdle. It's not going to be a Supreme. It's not going to be a Ballymore. And he only needs one more run to qualify for a hurdle race. So if he got a nice, quiet little spin at the DRF and then was to try and do what another coastal path did, Saint Roy, winning the County Hurdle in a race that Willie Mullins has got a phenomenal record in, all you got to do is give him one more spin and he's qualified. He'd be magic for that. Buried in a big field, ridden prominently enough, like settled 4th or 5th, but being able to come off the pace of a big field handicap, even if you could settle him at the rear and just deliver him fast and late so he doesn't have enough time to actually think about the race he's in, similar to the Barry Geraghty Saint Roy ride. That's the kind of way you need to ride him. They won't get a big enough field for the Supreme because there's just not enough horses. They won't go hard enough in a Ballymore. And if anything gets within a length of him, if a 50-1 shot gets within a length of him in the Supreme into the final furlong, that horse will go by him. And until I see him fight and win, I don't believe that he can. Am I being harsh there, Katie?
No, I think that's a fair enough point. We probably just didn't quite see out his races. He's probably a bridle horse.
He's Asterion Phalange 2.0. Another coastal path.
Should be said, does he not need 2 more runs now to run the County Hurdle?
No, he ran over hurdles in France.
Oh, I missed that. That's right down the bottom.
Yeah.
And that counts even if it doesn't contribute towards his handicap mark.
Yep.
That's bizarre.
Doesn't matter.
Right.
Doesn't matter. Well, I mean, it's the state man rule. Oh, we got to stop this pesky Willie Mullins coming over here taking our handicaps with.
So really, you want to buy a load of horses that run 3 times in France, then like get them a handicap mark over here from one run.
Like Gaeligoria, and there's another one there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's another strategy for Gary Moore's buying policy.
Yeah.
When Gary Moore's got a fleet of horses that have already had 3 runs over hurdles in France, you'll know exactly what the plan is for next season.
Yeah. I have seen Salvers still 20-1 for the Fred Winter as well, by the way, which nuts price because Timeform's highest rated juvenile of the year so far. The horse that won the finale at Chepstow, he's been given 128 by the handicapper. Timeform gave him 139. We've rated him higher than any juvenile in England and Ireland. And he's 20-1 for the Fred Winter off 128.
GSI, get stuck in. Get on board the gravy train. Gary Moore getting us the gravy for Cheltenham. It was Iniston was the big juvenile handicap hurdler last season, wasn't he?
Yeah, Iniston. Yeah. But he did run a good race at the end of the last season in a handicap, wasn't it? On Whitbread Day, I think. Oh no, it wasn't. It was in the Imperial Cup. Did you run the Imperial?
Oh, that was it.
Yeah,
but Gary always has a good juvenile to watch out for. So
yeah.
You're being told you're getting 20s. What do we make of Firefox now, Katie Young?
I actually, I don't think he's quite as good as people may have thought. I have my doubts about him. I know he beat Ballyburn and all that, but Willie's improving for the first runs, and I don't think we're necessarily seeing the best of their abilities. Gordon has his raring to go for the first runs, as I previously mentioned in other episodes, and I just don't think he has progression in him.
And he had a spin in the bumper as well before that maiden hurdle.
I think that's just kind of how. I think that's as good as he is. I'd be surprised. Like he was a 3-year-old when I was there, and he kind of rode as if he was going to be a stay-in prospect, and they're saying that he probably didn't stay 2.5. You know, whereas when he was a 3-year-old, he was a big raw horse, like he is galloping horse, and he's now saying that they don't think he stays. Like, I just don't think he's that good. That's just, I think he might be better a horse over fences, but I just have my doubts whether he's as good as they probably think he is.
I say it does worry me because like horses that win 2-mile bumpers tend to get 2.5 over hurdles. Like the faster, the actual out and out 2-milers tend to sort of struggle with better stayers in bumpers. Does that make sense? Like the horses you run in bumpers are your future stayers, and he did look to see it out very well in his bumpers. I'm not quite sure. The only thing I would say about the race was like he was really having to make his mind up for him all the way around at his hurdles. Like he didn't seem to be travelling too badly in between his hurdles, but Jack was really at pains to sort of really make his mind up for him at his hurdles. Like he wasn't maybe travelling as well as he looked like he was. It was the one thing that set alarm bells ringing for me quite early. Hopefully something comes up, but it's one of those things you wouldn't notice from Jack's body language, other than just he was really giving him a send into the hurdles, like he wasn't happy with actually how well he was travelling.
I wonder if there's something not quite right at Gordon's Yard, and this might be reaching, like really, really reaching, Jack Reacher reaching. But he's had 35 runners in the last 2 weeks and 3 winners. It's down to a 100% strike rate. I just wonder if everything is spot on. There's been a couple of horses that he's run that you'd have expected them to go a lot closer. And it is worth remembering that at Fairyhouse, when Gary O'Brien was asking Gordon Elliott, what's the status of your novice hurdlers? So like, what's the pecking order as things stand? Far and Glory had just won the Grade 1. And instantly he was saying, Firefox. Firefox is the one. And since he said that, Caldwell Potter's won a Grade 1. Far and Glory looked like he was going to win a second Grade 1 in the Form B and took a tumble. And Firefox has lined up in a Grade 1 and been spanked. So horses make fools of us. Katie could be right. Maybe he's just not that good. I'd be prepared to forgive him this. I thought I thought he emptied out a little bit too quickly. And the fact that he's beaten 8.5 lengths, like, I'll give him a pass for being beaten 8.5 lengths because I think he's better than that. But I proceed with caution. And somebody could easily start roaring at the screen or roaring at the speakers now and saying, well, hang on, why are you giving him a pass, but you're criticizing L'Atlantique? I've seen more of L'Atlantique, and 3 times I've seen him fight and wilt each time. That's what makes me concerned about him. Firefox, on the other hand, I suspect he's better than he showed there, but I would proceed with caution. Irish Point was being beaten in these kind of races. He got beaten in this race and got beaten at the DRF and very well backed before he pulled it together at Aintree. Maybe he'll be a similar one, but I'd be worried about him going to Cheltenham now. because that's what they might do. They might go the Irish Point route with him, Katie, and decide to go to Aintree with him instead of going to Cheltenham.
Yeah, I think pulling up on the point that Gordon's may have hit a bit of a flat spot this side of Christmas. I think you're right in there. And I was looking the other day, and there was, I think, a couple of his fancied runners. Like, imagine he just never finished out his race at all. And they might just be hitting a flat spot this time of year, and that might just be it. And he might bounce back for the spring festivals, but you would be discouraged watching him run like that after like kind of following his maiden hurdle win, beating Ballyburn. I just don't think he's that good, maybe. But if you take into consideration that maybe Gordon's horse aren't firing at this moment, then I think that's a good enough excuse for his poor run last week. But I would be wary going forward with him, I think.
Very good point to make. Here's a statistic for you. Gordon Elliott has 162 winners this season in Ireland. Willie Mullins is 170. Gordon Elliott has had how many runners, Katie?
About 867 or something like that, is he?
911.
Jeez, I was close.
How many runners, George Gorman, has Willie Mullins had?
750.
About 400, I'd say.
Closer, 517.
Jesus.
So Willie has gone past Gordon with nearly 40% less runners. Lads, what is going on? I mean, what Gordon's doing is extraordinary, and he will be champion trainer someday in Ireland. Not this season, though. Oh, the way Willie Mullins is going, it's just absolutely insane, the firepower they have. Just very briefly, Katie, this is the time of year where Paul Nicholls gives the flu jabs to his horses. Is that something that Gordon Elliott would do as well at this time of year?
No, I think Gordon normally does his at the start of the season when they come back in, normally when they're not kind of running.
Okay.
Because it can be, as obviously seen with Paul Nicholls, it can leave a little issue there for a couple of weeks, and they might, some of them do have quite a bit of ill effect from it. But yeah, normally Gordon's, it's kind of the start of the season, I think. Whether he's changed that now, I'm not sure, but it was normally before they kind of run, and they're in full swing of training. So
okay, just an interesting thing to keep in mind, because it does appear as though, for whatever reason, Gordon's horses aren't quite hitting the line in the way that they normally do, but no better man to put that right sooner rather than later. The Willie Mullins gravy train continued to roll on, though. Tullyhill in the winner's enclosure, a £220,000 purchase, who had completely bombed out on hurdling debut, but got it done nicely enough, Katie, Nace, for all that he is a slow jumper of a hurdle, and for that reason would have, I think he's going to be a lovely chaser, but I'd have absolutely no interest in him for a Grade 1 novice hurdle at Cheltenham this season.
Yeah, no, and he's another horse that kind of backs up my point about Willie's first time out. I think he was beaten 20 odd lengths at Punchestown. He ran abysmal, like he looked like there was something wrong with him that day. But he bounced back and looked a completely different horse here today. Made all, never seen another rival. I hope he's able to back this up in graded company next time out. I have my doubts, but I'm hoping that he can just take another step forward. His bumper form with a second to Dream to Share at Punchestown is reading well, and that gives me a bit of hope that he does have the touch of class needed in graded company. We know his ability there. I think we can put a line through that first run over hurdles at Punchestown, and we all know that he has plenty of ability. And I think we can kind of put a line through his first start over hurdles at Punchestown, and hopefully he can progress up into graded company. I'm not sure where connections will go. I know the Dublin Racing Festival is probably around 3 weeks. I don't know whether that might be a bit tight for a horse like him. But yeah, I'd say they'll probably have to go into graded company now. I'm not sure whether a step up to 2.5 would suit him at the moment, but he looks nice.
Yeah, he does. By the sounds of things, he is going to go to the Dublin Racing Festival and needs the experience. And I think he's going to have 2 runs before the Cheltenham Festival. So he's almost the exception that proves the rule. Let's bring the champion trainer Paul Nicholls into the equation, shall we? He's getting no love on this podcast. How dare it's all Irish bias, George Gorman. Let's correct that. With Kalif Du Berlais, who might not go to Cheltenham and was bought to win a Gold Cup. What did you make of his British debut?
I know it was a short price favourite, but I actually was told about this horse by a friend of the owner a couple of days before the race, told to watch it. And I sort of thought, well, he's short price favourite. Like, what am I watching? And then you found out quite quickly what you were watching. He looks a very nice horse in the making, doesn't he? I'd say if he was mine, looking at the size of him, I probably wouldn't run him in any of the juveniles at Cheltenham. I'd probably just wait with him, give him another year. But there was a lot to like. Like, even though he's obviously very green, very backwards, like he managed to sort himself out at all of his hurdles really nicely. There was actually one, was it the third or the fourth hurdle, the one before he turned into the back straight, where he got himself in a bit of a muddle, managed to sort his legs out so that he didn't lose momentum into the hurdle. Bless him, with the effort of sorting his feet out, he actually landed in trot for a few strides, but lost no speed. You have to watch it back. There's it's quite amazing, really. He lands doing the fastest trot you've ever seen, then picks up canter again. I just thought he was very likeable. He's half brother to a horse of ours called Kalif Du Berlais, who we would think a lot of, but suffers badly with his wins. So hopefully it's we really think that horse has a lot of ability, just unfortunately might not get the chance to show it. So hopefully this horse will be the one in the family that can breathe and gets to show everyone what they can do.
And staying with the juvenile hurdler form, but going back to the Willie Mullins dominance of the 2024 Cheltenham Festival, he is yet another Triumph Hurdle contender, or at least that might be the route they decide to go. They could go for the Jack de Bromhead Mares Novice Hurdle either. Miss Manzor, owned by Kenny Alexander, was ridden by Rachel Blackmore on her debut in Ireland in the Old Knight Frank race. It's a good performance. Just trying to figure out which of the best of the Willie Mullins juvenile hurdlers that is ultimately going to win the Triumph Hurdle, because that's the race he dominates now, including having the 1, 2, 3 in it last year, Katie. Where would she rank for you?
Yeah, I think it was a big ask for her on debut in the Grade 2 event. She's kind of thrown at the deep end a bit, but a step back down in grade, kind of seeing her more in the comfort zone here at the weekend. I'm not sure I'd have that high up on my agenda for the Triumph Hurdle off the back of that. I think she could be more of a Boodles candidate. Her form from this race is backing up Carla Conte's efforts quite nicely, however, and I'd probably be leaning more towards her for the Triumph at this point in time. I don't think she's even in betting for the Triumph Hurdle. I couldn't see her this morning anyway. So that kind of confirms to me that she's probably not high up on many people's agenda, and she could well be a Boodles horse all over.
Yeah, it probably makes a little bit more sense, or maybe tilt and use the weight advantage in the Jack de Bromhead Mares Novice Hurdle.
Yeah, the Mares Novice Hurdle. Yeah.
That would be asking an awful lot, though, of a juvenile hurdler, but still might be what they'll do. It's not like Willie Mullins is stuck for horses. She's a 40-1 shot, but not many firms have her priced up for the Triumph Hurdle. The market for the race is controlled by Britain, Burdett Road, and Sergino. And I'm telling you right now, there are two very nice horses, but Willie Mullins is going to win this race. It's just a matter of which one. Is it going to be Storm Heart, who was devastatingly impressive on his hurdling debut for the O'Leary camp? Is it going to be Bunting, who won at Limerick? If I had to choose now, I'd go with Bunting. But one of those two is probably going to win the Triumph Hurdle for Senior Mullins. Let's